Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Imagine that you are walking on a sunny bright day, but you aren't alone. Something is following you. You run and it runs with you. You stop and it stops with you. You are not followed by a person, you are followed by a shadow. Today's episode is about shadows. We will talk about shadows and what makes shadows. Then we'll do a cool science experiment using some simple things around the house to create shadows and learn about different materials. And finally, in the end, I'm going to show you how to make your own shadow puppet theater, where you can make any puppets or any shadows you'd like and have fun with it. A shadow is a dark shape or black shape that is made when something blocks the light. You must have some source of light, like a sunlight or a flashlight or a lamp to create a shadow. Even the fireplace or the campfire can make shadows. The objects must be opaque or translucent to make a shadow. So today we're going to use our scientific method to create our experiment. And remember, scientific method consists of several steps. One of the first steps is to ask a question. So we are going to ask a question. Then we're going to do a research about different materials and then create experiment, record our observation, and then see what happened to the hypothesis. The first part of the scientific method is to ask a question. So I have a question about shadows. What happens when light hits a particular material? So this is a question. The next step in our scientific method is to do a research. So when I went back and I looked at different materials, there are three types of materials: transparent, translucent, and opaque. Transparent materials are materials that let light through, like a plastic cover or a plastic lid, or it could be a clear plastic glass or plastic box. Those are transparent materials. The next group of materials are translucent materials. These are materials that let some light through, but you can still see through them. For example, it could be a fabric like curtains that let some light through, some tempered or colored glass, or protector sheets that are colored so you can still see some through it, but they are not completely transparent. And the final materials, it's the group of materials that exist are the opaque materials. They are ones that do not let light through. For example, a cup, it could be a toy, it could be a person or an object. Those are opaque materials. They're materials that do not let light through. So when I learned about those three types of materials, so I went around and I found those objects in my kitchen or along the toys, right? So I used the plastic lid from the crayons. I used a bottle that is translucent, and I have a plastic cup, a paper cup that is opaque. I'm going to use those to do my experiment. So the next step is to design the experiment. As we talk about, every shadow needs a source of light. So I'm going to use a light, and I'm going to use a screen that is behind me to create an experiment. So the first question, before I start, remember we have to make a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a prediction or a guess. What do you think will happen if you shine a light and you put an object in front of it? So what will happen to the light? My question was, what happens when light hits a particular material? The first one, in my recording sheet, which you can save and download from the description below, I recorded my predictions or my hypothesis. So I said I predict that the light will pass through the cup and will be seen clearly and brightly on the screen. So I'm going to use a cup, and I'm also going to use a plastic clear cover so you guys can see what happens to the light when you use a transparent material. Next prediction was prediction number 2. I predict when I use translucent material, I predict that the light will pass through the cup. However, it will not be as bright and as clear as the transparent material because the cup or the bottle is not clear. And prediction number 3 is using opaque material. When I use a cup, I predict that the light will not pass through the cup and it will create a shadow. So let's do our experiment. The first material I'm going to use is a transparent, so I'm going to use the glass. I'm going to place in front of the light source, so you can use any light source at home that you have, and shine it on the wall on a white sheet. And then my first prediction was that the light will pass through, and I see that the light is passing through the glass, and I can see through the glass. It does create some shadow, but most of the light is coming through. I'm going to try some transparent material like a plastic cover. Can I have this for a second? Look! If I shine this through in front of the light, you can see that the light passes through. You can see that the light passes through and creates almost no shadow because this material is transparent. The next material I'm going to use a translucent material. Remember, translucent material is the material that lets some light through it. I'm going to place my source of light, and I'm going to place the bottle in front of the light and see, as I look at the shadow that creates, I can see that a lot of light passes through. So the middle section, you can see it's still pretty light because some light can get through the translucent material. And the final part of the experiment is to use an opaque material. So I'm going to use a cup. I'm going to place in front of the light, and what I see that there is no light passing through and the shadow is dark. So I do not see any areas of light in the cup that lets, right? I do not see any light coming through, and I create a shadow. So this is how the shadow works. The light travels like in a straight line, like a beam, and when it hits the opaque material, it can pass through it, and it creates a shadow, so it creates a dark shape. You can place any kinds of shape in front of the light and create shadows. So I have some stuffed animals here. If I use them and I place them in front of the light, it will also create shadows. Like I have a little goat shadow, or you can have a little reindeer, Rudolph the reindeer. So when you create shadows, as long as you place an opaque or translucent material in front of the light, you will have a shadow. You can try all kinds of objects and things at home to create shadows. So we made our experiment, we have our predictions, and then now we're going to record our observation in our sheet. Was our prediction correct? My first prediction was the light will pass through the transparent material, and you will see it on the screen. Yes, we saw most of the light pass through the glass, and we saw almost no shadow. So we did see some shape outside, but most of the cup was not visible on the screen. The second one was, our prediction was that some light will pass through, so we saw some light on the screen. And finally, our final one is when we use a cup, the light could not pass through it because it's opaque material and will not let any light through. So here's how you can make a simple light experiment, shadow experiment at home by just using a flashlight and some white sheet or a wall and just a dark room, so you can make some shadows. The next step is we're going to read a story about Gruffalo's child and learn a little bit about shadows through that book, and then I'll show you how to make your own puppet theater. So let's look at some books. So there are lots of cool books about shadows. I have some favorite is the Gruffalo Child. This is one of my favorite, there you can see how shadows can really trick us. Then there's also some information text about shadows you can find online or in the libraries, and chasing shadows. Some of the kids in this book are chasing shadows. They're thinking this is a dragon, but when they go, they actually see that it is dad, working in the shed. Or they're thinking that this is some spooky ghost. But when they go and check, what they see that it's just grandma hanging some clothes. So shadows are really tricky, and they can trick us because they look different. They look much bigger and scary than the real thing. So we're going to read the book about Gruffalo Child, The Gruffalo's Child by Julia Donaldson and picture by Alex Schaffler. The Gruffalo said that no Gruffalo should ever set foot in a deep dark wood. Why not? Why not? Because if you do, the big bad mouse will be after you. I met him once, said the Gruffalo. I met him a long time ago. What does he look like? Tell me, Dad. Is he terribly big and terribly bad? I can't quite remember, the Gruffalo said. Then he thought for a minute and scratched his head. The big bad mouse is terribly strong and his scaly tail is terribly long. His eyes are like pools of terrible fire, and his terrible whiskers are tougher than wire. One snowy night, while the Gruffalo snored, the Gruffalo's child was feeling bored. The Gruffalo's child was feeling brave, so she tiptoed out of the Gruffalo cave. The snow fell fast and the wind blew wild. Into the woods went the Gruffalo's child. Aha! Oh ho! A trail in the snow. Whose is this trail and where does it go? A tail poked out of a long pile house. Could this be the tail of the big bad mouse? Out slid the creature. His eyes were small and he didn't have whiskers. No, none at all. You are not a mouse. Not I, said the snake. He's down by the lake eating Gruffalo cake. The snow fell fast and the wind blew wild. I am not scared, said the Gruffalo's child. Aha! Oh ho! Marks in the snow. Whose are these claw marks? Where do they go? Two eyes gleamed out of a treetop house. Could this be the eyes of the big bad mouse? Down flew the creature. His tail was short, and he didn't have whiskers of any sort. You are not the mouse. Too-hoo, not I. But he is somewhere nearby eating Gruffalo pie. The snow fell fast and the wind blew wild. I am not scared, said the Gruffalo's child. Aha! Oh ho! A track in the snow. Whose is this track and where does it go? Whiskers at last and an underground house. Could this be home of the big bad mouse? Out slunk the creature. His eyes weren't fiery. His tail wasn't scaly. His whiskers weren't wiry. You are not the mouse. Oh no, not me. He's under a tree drinking Gruffalo tea. It's all a trick, said the Gruffalo's child, as she sat on a stump where the snow lay piled. I don't believe in the big bad mouse. But here comes the little one out of his house. Not big, not bad, but a mouse at least. You'll taste good as a midnight feast. Wait, said the mouse, before you eat, there is a friend of mine that you ought to meet. If you let me hop onto a hazel twig, I'll beckon my friend so bad and big. The Gruffalo's child unclenched her fist. The big bad mouse, so he does exist. The mouse hopped onto the hazel tree. He beckoned and said, just wait and see. Out came the moon. It was bright and round. A terrible shadow fell onto the ground. Who is this creature so big, bad, and strong? His tail and his whiskers are terribly long. His ears are enormous, and over his shoulder he carries a nut as big as a boulder. The big bad mouse, yelled the Gruffalo child. The mouse jumped down from the twig and smiled. Aha, oh ho, prints in the snow. Whose are those footprints? Where do they go? The footprints led to the Gruffalo cave, where the Gruffalo's child was a bit less brave. The Gruffalo's child was a bit less bored. And the Gruffalo snored and snored and snored. Now I'm going to show you how to make a shadow puppet theater at home by using just a shoebox and some simple things like a paper and some craft sticks to make your puppets. So what you're going to need, you need some kind of a box. So I have a shoe box. I cut the back of it out and I put the white piece of paper, so I taped it around. Use some blue paper to make it look pretty. You'll need some source of light. I'm using a light behind. You can use a flashlight or any kind of light or lamp that you have at home. You're going to put it behind your shadow puppet, and then you're gonna use some paper and scissors and cut out some shapes. So in my story was about the Gruffalo child that went out because it was bored to look for the big bad mouse. But when it was walking, it found some creatures. One of the first creatures it found was the snake. Alright, they walked away and found a snake. So you can make all kinds of puppets at home by taking your paper, putting some craft stick behind it, or toothpick, or any kind of sticks that you have at home. So it's easy to manipulate and control. So I have my Gruffalo child, and then you can make a play. And it met a snake. So you have your characters, and you can make a fox, because he meets a fox in the story. And he thought it was the Gruffalo. The Gruffalo child thought it was the big bad mouse. And then finally, you can see that it met a big bad mouse. And when I put my shadow puppet closer to the light, the shadow gets bigger. When I put it away, the shadow gets smaller. So by using those basic simple things, you can make your own puppet show. You can also use stickers or small toys like I did earlier before, place it in front of the light, and you will have a shadow. So what is your favorite story? You can pick your characters from your story and make a little show. One of my favorite books, like I said, was Gruffalo Child, to make a puppet show because it's about the shadows. If you have a favorite book about shadows, go ahead, post a comment below and let me know what's your favorite book and some of your favorite characters. And then you can create your own puppet show using the basic things that you have at home. If you like this episode, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, and come back to watch your next episode about tangrams. See you again soon. I can't read unless I have the book.
Kate, you read it to the audience. Yeah, you read it.
Look, there's a shadow.
No.
Why does she like that book?
I don't know, she never really cared, but now suddenly because I hold it, she wants it.
Hold the other one.
Ooh, I'm gonna read this book. And this one. Okay. Look, you want to see Peppa again?
You're ridiculous, Kate.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
You're not going to share your books with Mommy? You just killed Peppa Pig.
Uh-oh. No, look.
You can't trick her. She's smart.
Probably pause it. Unless you want that big.
No, I'm getting it. It's funny.